Thanks to all of our sponsors, and this week we're highlighting Dairy Berry's Recording Studio. Find him at dairyberriesrecordingstudio.com or call Mark at 303-456-8216. Open up, Colorado. It's 420. Time to grind and burn.
This is not your son's stoner show.
Welcome back, family, friends, fellow cannapreneurs. Welcome to the Cannabis Community Project, here for another weekly podcast from the CCP studios high up in Denver, Colorado. Here exploring the business side of this newly emerging Colorado economy, focusing on the business, the patient, the retailer, to the geek in the garage, creating that next innovation. This is the first media platform to help fellow cannapreneurs just like you build sustainable businesses while living the lifestyle. Very good. Let's move on. Get ready for this week's show. We're going to get deep in business again, learn more about the business side of this emerging economy. The business side from across the pond. That's right. Our guest today, Peter from the UK, is coming to us all the way from the other side of the ocean to talk about what's going on that side of the world. You know, business is business, but Colorado cannabis is touching the world all over the place, and that's what we're going to learn about today. We're going to hear about Peter and his financial background, his group of investors, and previous businesses and ideas that they're thinking about for this industry. You know, Peter's been a listener of the show, so he's very versed in what we do here, and he's familiar with some of the other shows we've done with the businesses like the Cannabis Commodities Exchange, and they have some similar ideas, some thoughts have been thrown around and put together, and that's what we're going to hear about, because these are the type of people who are going to inject money into the industry beyond just, you know, maybe a pipe blower or a head shop or even a grower, who are creating their micro businesses and bringing it to market little by little and growing through employees to larger facilities. These are the type of business people who look at starting out with a few $100,000, if not $1 million on their plate and emerging into economies with a bang, where they bring in industry professionals, experts, and an infrastructure, but maybe from just a slightly bigger seed there. They bring it to the table, and he's going to tell us all about what his thoughts are for this industry. But before we get to that, let's make sure we don't forget what we learned about last week with J.D. Statzer, our political prisoner of war in this industry, the war on drugs. Mr. Statzer is an activist, a true activist out there working for cures, not wars, working for patients, working for the better cause of society. And he had a very powerful story because his story involves him being slightly a martyr, losing 3 years of his life to something that, quite frankly, nobody can really understand. But he did it, and he told us about it. And if you didn't hear it, I recommend you go back and listen to the full episode. But right now, let me just give you a couple minutes so you can remember what it was about, and then we can move on to this week's show. So here you go, our true activist, part of the community, POW Statzer. Here it is.
Well, I certainly got a lot to say. This is Jay Statzer with Cures Not Wars. I'm a rally organizer myself. You see, I was one of the 3 people that got caught in Nebraska trying to transport cannabis medicine from one legal dispensary in Arizona to another one in Washington, D.C. So I just got done doing 3 years in prison for it. But one of the proudest things was the fact that I had the crew behind me to where when I did time, the rally didn't just fall apart because I wasn't there. The High Times magazine used to have these people called the Freedom Fighters, and they would go to all the rallies, and they would be the ones that would help set up the tables and run the tables and, you know, do do a bucket drive or, put up posters and, clean the site afterwards. And the thing about it is when you're involved in political work as much as I've been over the decades, you start to get a little frustrated about the slow progress. To me, this issue stopped being funny about the time the government started killing my friends over it. I was part of the whole Rainbow Farm scene here in Vandalia, Michigan. Year after year after year, and the cops tried as well as they could to infiltrate it and hassle it. And the early years had protection from the Michigan militia. I mean, they were able to keep the state police at bay. These events that were starting to change things here in Michigan. And that's what they do in the war on drugs. Not so much a social thing anymore. It's a real serious thing, and people got to be more serious in how they help each other. But it doesn't matter if somebody smokes a joint at my event, which I have no control over. All of a sudden, the event's just about a place to go to smoke a joint, which is fine, actually. I mean, that's what the D.C. smoking is in front of the White House. Everybody, has a place where they get that year. And really, you can boil Cures Not Wars down to a double-barreled shotgun approach, which is one, return the safe substitute cannabis to its rightful place in society. Then you have the safe substitute to all the other hard drugs that people might want to take. And for those who still want to take the hard drugs and then get addicted and want to get off, we promote Ibogaine, which is an FDA-studied one-time treatment drug for addiction that instead of a maintenance drug, it's an antidote.
Yeah,
because we have the safe substitute, we have the holistic approach to solving the entire war on drugs. So anyone that's serious about ending the war on drugs is with us. But it's also self-empowering. It's disconnecting yourself from the propaganda that was used against you. And again, the control of words is the first step in mind control. They were on that first. Now we are following up and doing the cleanup on that. Now, another big part of my Back with the Vengeance message is we need to tie the antidote to addiction, Ibogaine, with cannabis. It is a very credible, scientifically proven reason why those two substances are connected to the point where they're basically sister substances, so that we can tell people that when the DARE program tells kids that pot's an addictive drug, they're lying. That you can go to the Cures Not Wars website, and it's Cures Not Wars with hyphen between the words.org, and Dana at phantom.com, who's Dana Beal, the founder of the organization, DANA at PHANTOM.com.
Very good, man. Cool. We talked about a lot.
Well, thanks for the opportunity to get the word out.
And there it is, straight from the man himself, J.D. Statzer. Find him on Facebook. Find him on YouTube. Go to Cures Not Wars with hyphens in the middle.org and find him there. He's one of those guys that will keep you at the front of the industry with what's going on. Maybe you're like that. Maybe you have some news or some insight or some personal connections and stories. Maybe you have a business or some ideas, something that you feel like the community would benefit from just to hear about. That's what I want to hear from you. I want you to contact me so we can get that on the air. I want to discuss all of these issues, everything from health, legal, food, growing, and everything technology, of course. So go to my Facebook, go to the webpage, go to whatever medium is most convenient for you to communicate, reach out to me, and we'll get you on the air too. Here's some trickle-down economics for you. So Jay Moore gave us tickets. We promoted it. He came on the show. We promoted it. And then throughout the show, we got more interactions and listens. And as a result, it got picked up by another show from my very own podcasting coach, Dave Jackson from the School of Podcasting.com, where I got my inspiration to take action and get my own podcast production together. I am part of the School of Podcasting, an active member every month. And Dave has a podcast that gets close to 50,000 hits a month. He has multiple thousand listens every month. Very popular podcaster with multiple podcasts, along with a whole network of podcasters that are becoming very popular themselves. I got my 4 minutes on his show. He was talking about us in the Jay Moore interview. Let me just play a couple minutes of that for you. One thing leads to the next, to the next, to the next. And who knows what's next.
You are listening to the School of Podcasting Morning Announcements.
Today on episode number 419 of the School of Podcasting's Morning Announcements, we have a really cool Because of My Podcast story. I always like to start off the show with some sort of podcasting success story, and I got an email from somebody from the School of Podcasting who is going by the name of Brainstorm. So this is and it's a well-produced. All the music and stuff was done by Brainstorm here from the Cannabis community. And check out this because of my podcast story.
Hey, Dave and other fellow podcasters.
Hey.
This is also known as Brainstorm from the CannabisCommunityProject.com, your weekly broadcast podcast about the newly emerging Colorado economy.
Now, for those of you outside the U.S., the emerging economy in that particular area, pot is now legal. Hee hee.
Hey, you want to hear something cool that happened the other day because of my podcast?
I do.
So I was listening to one of my podcasts the other day, the Adam Carolla Show, and Jay Moore was on. You know Jay Moore, sports talk, many movies, Jerry Maguire, TV shows, been around for 20-some years, very funny guy. Well, he was on and saying he was coming through Boulder and had a few extra tickets that he was looking to push through. So me, being the one always looking out for opportunities, sent him an email thinking, well, what can it hurt? I mean, somebody's got to answer these emails. So I sent him an email saying, I got a small podcast, maybe some demographics that might be right up his alley, and if he could send me a ticket or two, I would promote it on the show, and I would be thoroughly grateful. What did he do? He personally sent me an email back no more than 10-15 minutes later, saying he had 10 tickets for me that I could use to personally promote and give away on my show to those I wanted. And that's exactly what I'm going to do. So for the next week, I'm going to exploit his name on every social media platform I have and at the beginning of every show I do, because he actually said in his emails.
Now, I want to stop it. I hate to ruin the awesome production here. So Jay Moore does something very cool. And by the way, I love Jay Moore. This is a guy that gets podcasting. What's interesting is he's taking podcasting things and putting them on radio, and it's really freaking people out. So here he did one nice thing, and it's trickling down now. It's the nice gift that keeps on giving. All right, back to, I keep wanting to call him Brainstorm.
Which is now close to 12 interactions back and forth over the last couple days.
You get that? He's interacted 12 times with Jay Moore. The guy was in Jerry Maguire. He starred in movies with Jennifer Aniston. He's a stand-up comedian. He's the producer of Last Comic Standing. This is Jay Moore we're talking.
You can use my emails on your show. All you have to do is not me over, dude, quote unquote, were his exact words. So I'm going to do my best to not him over and promote it and take advantage of it and use it as a stepping stone, because now I have the confidence. So the next time I hear somebody throwing a challenge out there saying, email me and I'll write you back, I'm going to do it. And the first thing I'm going to say is, hey, Jay Moore was briefly involved with my podcast. Maybe I have a demographic or an audience that could help you too.
Now, notice here, once you get the first big fish, it's easier to get the second one. That's very awesome. Very cool. And what did he say? I don't know. I'll email him. All he can say is ignore me. Very cool story.
Well, there you have it. Because of my podcast, little by little working up in the world, getting closer to where I want to be. Maybe one day I can move past Jay Moore and get Dave Jackson on my show.
Right. Anytime, buddy. Anytime. I don't know that I'll be much help, as I've never smoked pot ever. I know. Sorry to let you guys down. You can find the podcast at CannabisCommunityProject.com. Thank you so much for sharing that story.
Feeling guilty about a time with cannabis? Get it off your chest and confess it on Cannafessions, your public forum to absolve your soul.
New voice message, Wednesday, 4:21 p.m.
Yeah, my name is Daniel, and I'm gonna tell a story about when I was a teenager. I used to get my mom to buy her weed. She used to give us lunch money for school every day, like $10, $15 a week. And we were supposed to buy food from the school cafeteria. And my friends and I would just put our lunch money together and buy her a weed bag. But I guess she never knew, so it's time to tell her that, thanks, Mom, you were, I guess, subsidizing our weed in high school. Sorry.
And that was Cannafessions. If you have a confession to make, contact me. via Facebook or the website at cannabiscommunityproject.com.
Hi, this is True Diligence,
PI,
proud sponsor. If you're looking for a job
in the cannabis industry,
you know how fierce the competition is. Think of the character you'll demonstrate by showcasing your credentials at the beginning of the hiring process. A simple yet affordable way to show employers you're the clear choice. Visit our website at truediligence.com.
Move your resume to the top.
All right, cool.
When it comes to staying, I'll be leaving. When it comes to going down the road, when it comes to starting, I'll be ending. End up wherever I may roam, wherever I may roam, wherever I may roam.
Hey there.
Hey, Peter.
I'm good, thanks. Yourself?
I'm doing real good.
Yeah, oddly for the UK, we're actually having a bit of a almost mini heat wave, I guess. So,
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What's the temperature?
30 degrees centigrade. I don't do Fahrenheit, unfortunately. I'm originally from South Africa, and I've never adjusted to Fahrenheit or miles, for that matter.
We'll just let people figure it out and do their own math on that one. What part of the UK are you in?
Down south. I live in Surrey, not far from Gatwick Airport.
Well, I've never been to that side of the world, or the other side of the pond, as it's said. But so as far as geography and distance and space, I have no idea what we're actually talking about as far as, how big the country is and what it means to be
tiny, dude. I mean, you can get almost from any point to any point at its furthest distances in probably 8 hours in a car.
Okay. So that puts it in perspective to me, because basically if I drove 8 hours from where I am, I would be to the border of our state. So
precisely.
So basically it's about the size of Colorado, if you're familiar at all with our geography over here.
Semi, yeah. I mean, what you guys consider a short distance being 400 miles, that's in England, 400 years isn't a long time. The pub at the end of my road is more than 400 years old. So
wow. Well, it's very similar to when I talk to people who live on the East Coast in New York, Boston area, where they're very living in a similar situation, very closed in, very short, or not short, but I guess small living area. So to them, a couple miles might literally be their entire life that they've ever lived. But out here in Colorado, it's not quite the Old West, but we're very big and very spread out, and we have a lot of room to move around.
Excellent. I grew up in that sort of environment. I'm originally from South Africa, and so used to wide open spaces. There are game reserves in South Africa which are bigger than England. So
oh wow,
that's England, not taking into consideration Scotland and Wales and places like that. But there's some pretty large game reserves over there.
Wow. Well, it sounds like you've been around the world a little bit, traveled.
Cannabis industry entrepreneur, currently investigating and looking to set up a cannabis-based industry service in the United States. I'm the head of financial market data services for a couple of business units within a bigger organization, which is partly why I raised the original question with you about finding out contacts in Colorado or anywhere else in the U.S. and amongst the numerous states where it's become legal for medicinal use, and in the two now that it's for recreational, about foreigners being able to get into the industry over there. Right. And we're not talking about as dispensary or recreational outlet or even a grow facility or anything like that. I mean, as I mentioned, I come from a financial market data background. That's sort of where I have a lot of interest in the the financial market side of it. You have had somebody on who's taken a stab at doing that, the cannabis commodity exchange guys.
Right.
And I always think competition is healthy, and we may very well be coming up with something that could be competitive in that space. But hey, that's what makes for a healthy environment, is to have some competition.
Excellent. Hey,
cool.
Do people consider this industry, what we're doing over here, to be rare and scandalous?
It depends. I suppose like everywhere, it depends who you speak to. There is definitely a growing movement over here, I feel, where people are waking up and saying, hang on, we've been fed a certain amount of bullshit for long enough, and it doesn't make sense. And yes, the war on drugs is a failed war on drugs. And you're having very outspoken celebrities, I guess, if you want to phrase it that way, who are coming out in favor of saying we need to change the strategy that we use. You shouldn't be criminalizing it. You've got the likes of Richard Branson coming out, saying that the war on drugs is very much a failed concept. Russell Brand being another one who's very outspoken on that front. Plus, numerous other people. And then you've got in the UK, of course, you've got that crowd, GW Pharmaceuticals, who's one of the few licensed, I think in the UK, actually, they're the only licensed pharmaceutical organization that can do anything with cannabis. And of course, they give it the green light that, yes, this is great once they've charged you 1,000 times the price. And then suddenly it's safe as well. And a lot of people are going, time for change.
If I heard you right, there is an actual company, a pharmaceutical company, that is allowed to grow and distribute cannabis?
Yeah, if you search on Google, and they're listed on the London Stock Exchange and on the New York Stock Exchange. They're called GW Pharmaceuticals. And they have, I forget the name of the two extracts that they do. The first one was being for treatment of multiple sclerosis, or MS sufferers, to help with the symptoms. A topical spray, I guess you just spray it under your tongue, I think is how it's supposed to be taken. And now they've started to do more in the severe epilepsy space. So getting, I guess, more in the higher CBD end of the spectrum and producing a spray to work in that area. But, they're the only ones who are licensed to do it in the UK. And a lot of people are saying, hold on, I can grow this medicine in my back garden. If we're looking at it from that sense, why do I have to pay a pharmaceutical company exorbitant amounts of money for this product?
Right.
And you're getting all this, it's definitely, I think, from the point of view of the internet, that's certainly something that's helped break down the barriers and educate the public, and more information becomes available. And what's been happening in the US, a lot of people are watching it with a lot of interest to see what goes on there. And, the US has traditionally been a very conservative country, and to see this level of progress is refreshing. And you do start to think, well, hang on, if the US are prepared to make these steps, why isn't somebody else prepared to make the same steps?
Yeah.
Especially in England. I mean, Spain is very liberal. Portugal, they've decriminalized, if I am correct on this, I think they decriminalized all narcotics up to a certain point, and they haven't seen a massive influx. In fact, they've seen, a drop-off in certain areas. Of course, you've got Holland that's been with coffee shops for many, many years.
Right.
And you've got Uruguay, that's a big step forward, and Jamaica have just decriminalized it as well, I believe. And the little known fact that in Mexico, they decriminalized, I believe, small quantities of pretty much everything quite some time ago.
Absolutely. Yeah, it was during the late 2012 year. I was actually in Mexico when that happened. It was the least talked about news story of the year, probably the biggest as far as affecting just local communities. And this is what's happening around the world. But it's interesting to hear a perspective of the U.S. looked at from an outsider perspective, because within the U.S., we definitely see ourselves in much smaller communities broken up. Whereas here in Colorado, in Washington, specifically these two states, we consider ourselves to be unique and very individual, regardless of what the rest of the 300 million people in the U.S. are doing. There are states that are very conservative, and there are states that will probably hold out till the very last minute. And then there's other states like California and Washington and Colorado that are much easier in upgrading their beliefs and laws and politics. So it's
and I'm sure when people start to see the money rolling in, I mean, that's a great incentive for the political movement to change.
The money has started rolling in already, and I assume that's what is attracting individuals from around the world to look at investment opportunities. I mean, investors, I guess, by nature, don't really care what the industry is or what the product is. They're looking as an investor on what is the return, what is the stability, what is the risk, what is the long-term projection. And if we just take away the industry itself of cannabis and we take away what people are doing with it, I think there's going to be other investors around the world that are going to start pulling out their pocketbooks and seeing how much money they can throw at the industry.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, if it makes good business sense, it makes good business sense. It doesn't really matter what the business is. If it's got a solid business plan behind it and it looks good and it has the potential to make money, you are going to have people wanting to invest and get in on the action. What we're looking at is bringing to the market some of the benefits around what we've learned over the years of working in finance and seeing what some of the financial exchanges offer, or say market exchanges offer. I've got to be careful. It's so difficult to talk about it without going into too much detail and giving away too much. But I took a look at what if we could cut the following bit out of the final piece that goes on. But, we took a look at what...
You want me to cut this out, what you're about to say?
Yeah, I mean, I'll let you know, and just so you understand where the angle that we're coming at.
Okay, hold on 1 second. Let me pause my recorder.
Product that sits around that encompasses the entire industry, where yes, recreational and medicinal cannabis also fits into it. Does somebody producing medicinal hemp oil really care if it was a Durban poison sativa that they made this from, or are they interested in making sure that they can guarantee grade A 20 pounds of what's considered grade A medical quality sativa or indica to produce the oil from? And it's difficult to get in and start securing that. And that's what a commodity exchange is really there to do. That's why they were set up to start with. And it guaranteed you X amount delivered on this day at this quality. You always knew you were getting a consistent quality through the exchange. From the financial side, there's all the derivative products that come out of this, which are pure financial products. There's futures contracts to be traded and options on futures, which is our area of expertise and experience in the market. So we're just seeing it as this is another commodity that has an entire industry that sits around it, and we want to bring the benefits of a commodity exchange to this specific sector.
Okay, so let me summarize just for a quick bit here. So a commodity exchange is not simply just bringing together buyers and sellers to balance out an excess and a shortage. It's also there to provide security in the exchange, security and safety in the individuals who are involved in the exchange, almost like a membership, and to facilitate all the little details that go along with the logistics of making that exchange happen. Just because a buyer who has a shortage finds a seller who has an excess doesn't necessarily mean a smooth transaction is going to happen. It just means the right parties have found each other. But now there's a whole list of steps that have to happen to make a professional and a legitimate, true commodity, an exchange of commodities happen in a way that makes the market grow and thrive outside of just the internet or a specific individual.
Yeah, exactly. If you go and have a look at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, at CME, or any one of the other numerous commodity exchanges that are out there, you buy corn grade A. It doesn't mean it's the best corn, but it's what the exchange has set, that this is what we consider grade A corn. When you buy this, it is always the same. And you are saying, and you can guarantee a future delivery of, I don't know, let's say 10 pounds of grade A sativa for $5,000. You're agreeing and securing that to be delivered in 3 months' time. And then it arrives, and it's you're in a legally bound contract to pay and deliver this in 3 months' time. And this is where you start to get into the financial products that spin off it, which is where you have some bad weather conditions. The prices have now gone up to that £10 is going to cost you $8,000. But I already have a prearranged agreement to only pay $5,000 for it. I can now take my $5,000 contract and sell it to somebody for $6,000. And so the contract actually starts to get sold. It's a little bit more complicated on the pure financial product side of things, but that's technically what starts to go on. You get the secondary market where it's people buying and selling the futures contracts themselves. Well, our group is not just interested in the recreational or the medical aspect of it. We're looking at it as the cannabis or marijuana family as a whole. So I think there's probably even a bigger market in the hemp side of the industry.
Well, absolutely. And I think most people agree with that because the percentage of users from a medicinal or recreational point is far smaller than those who could use derivatives of products derived from hemp. So I think just by the nature of the math itself, the hemp market is going to be far bigger just because of the possibilities of what can be brought to the market. Whereas when you're dealing with medicinal or recreational, there's really one product being sold, and that's the consumption of THC or CBD to get in your body. Yeah. When you're talking about hemp, it splinters off into thousands of branches of possibilities of individual product. So I think there's a huge market there, but there's a couple barriers. So how do we get around these barriers? One, when we're dealing with a state like Colorado, businesses feel safer and secure, if that's the right word, more secure, rather than crossing state lines. The next week's show that's coming out is with an individual that just spent 3 years in prison for taking legal medical marijuana from a legal state, transporting it to another legal state, but in the meantime, in the route in the middle, was arrested and spent 3 years in prison because he crossed state lines through a state that did not have those same laws in place. So this is a challenge that the industry as a whole has to figure out how to get around, because the ideal world of a pure market doesn't quite exist when you have multiple governments who disagree on what legal means.
Oh, precisely. And that is something, again, that our venture is, we actually hope to put forward some proposals on how we can get around. From the capitalist or from the business perspective, what I really would love is for the federal government to turn around and say, if you want to buy and sell cannabis-based products across state lines, you have to do it through that exchange. I mean, that would be the ultimate win because you now have government sanctioned, which may sit uneasy with some people, but if you're looking at it purely from an international business, it's a hell of a stamp of approval to get. We've been working at how would we do this? How would you bring to the table to make people feel comfortable at the various state levels and various legal levels, a way to safely transport the product between the various states? Because right now, I believe the law even stands, if you have two states where it's legal in both and they border each other, technically you can't transport it across straight lines. It has to stay in state.
Right,
is my understanding. So even if Colorado backed Washington, you couldn't take your weed from Washington to Colorado in either way, which is problematic. If you look at the issue that Washington just had with going recreational, they ran out of weed. I mean, the guy was open for 1 day and he was completely sold out. I mean, I saw the best headline I've ever seen in a newspaper. I mean, it might have been on Huffington Post, actually. I mean, Washington has a weed problem, not enough weed. I thought that was... in my lifetime, I didn't expect to see a headline like that. And this, again, is where our commodity exchange would come into play. It's being able to take care of that problem. You're sourcing it from all over the US. You're potentially sourcing it from Uruguay, from Spain, it's an international market that you open up.
Well, some of these problems are self-created in the sense that
In Washington, what happened in Washington was the same thing that happened here in Colorado for that first month in January, where shops or centers were experiencing shortages. But it wasn't a shortage due to an excess of demand. It was a shortage due to the specific regulation that they were bound to. Is that they're still bound to regulation as medical centers, which restricts the amount they can grow and what percentage of their facility they can use to grow. So basically, they're being forced to grow small amounts, but the gates are being open to the public to come in and buy. So that's naturally going to create a shortage when the shop itself cannot grow to meet its own demand because of regulation.
Yeah.
So there's I got an idea for you. I want to see how crazy this sounds. Since we're talking about international lines and state lines, you know how the I don't know if this is actually true or not for international law, but you know how they say when you go 10 miles off the coast of the ocean, you're in international waters and laws don't really apply to that sense?
Yeah.
So Richard Branson, a supporter of the industry, also is a friend of Elon Musk, who has a space company. What if there was a way to just shoot a rocket straight up in space, turn it around, and have it drop straight down into the state, so it never actually crosses state lines, because once it passes a certain elevation up in the sky, it's like the ocean. Once you go past a mile or whatever, you're no longer in anybody's territory, so you just go straight up, turn it, and come straight down in the state where you want to land, and we start putting the space technology to good use.
That would be fantastic. Probably make it fairly expensive weed all of a sudden.
But it would
add another dimension to being spaced out.
There you go. And just think of the advancement of technology we would get just trying to get people their marijuana.
And from an alien observation perspective, what the fuck are these people playing at?
Well, these are some issues that are going to take, I think, more than lawyers, because these are real issues about technicalities of law and finance and creating markets. I think it's going to take individuals having a true change internally within their soul, because even a good lawyer that finds a technicality in the law is only going to last so long. If somebody within themselves just doesn't support the industry and doesn't want it legal, there's going to be an eternal battle that just goes on forever. Always somebody trying to take it away. So maybe we need lawyers on the issue. Maybe we need more economists and finance people to figure out the perfect market. Or maybe we need to figure out a way just to get to the heart of people and let people have a change from within that says, let's just include this into our system. And then
I think that's what's actually happening. I think people are these days far more educated than they used to be on matters such as this. People don't buy into the propaganda as quickly and easily as they used to. We're getting at the point where we're going to start looking for funding to kick this off. And you mentioned Richard Branson. He's actually one of the people who we're going to be approaching for funding.
How does that work? Do you send an email or you pick up the phone?
Thankfully, having a couple of people in the group are rather well connected and on that sort of social circle side of things.
Okay.
And we're hoping to use those connections to get in front of the likes of Richard Branson and, to be honest, people like Snoop Dogg, Brad Pitt. We'll be going for private equity funding, specifically targeting people who, A, have the business head and support the cause, so to speak.
I wish I could video document that process, because Snoop Dogg, Richard Branson, I assume you don't get their names off of a telemarketing list. And
no. I think that could make an interesting documentary. I certainly do.
Absolutely. That's what people need to see. People need to actually see what you're physically doing to get a business going, rather than hearing somebody kind of talk about all the phrases that don't really mean anything at the end of the day. People actually need to see, when you get up in the morning and when you go to bed at night,
what are you actually doing day in and day out to make a business run, regardless of whether it's in the cannabis industry or the shoe industry, whatever industry you're in. What are the actual actions to be successful at business?
Oh, yeah. It's not, it is blood, sweat, and tears. And I think some people do assume it's an easy ride, but it's not. I think you even mentioned on one of the previous ones, the number of successful ideas or people who have successful ideas is 1 in a million. And then to actually make that idea become a reality is 1 in a billion. And it just starts to spiral smaller and smaller and smaller until it becomes successful. But
you're going to give me goosebumps quoting things back to me.
See, I do listen.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and as I said, our whole approach is that they have an interest in it. They don't understand or they don't believe in the prohibition that exists. They think it makes absolutely no sense. And so it's an interesting group of people that I've brought together to take this idea on.
Well, what is the pitch like? Because I assume you're making that statement as a qualifier to say you're working probably with many people who don't necessarily partake in the industry's recreational and medicinal side, but they want to be involved in the business. How do you actually pitch that to them? Do you tell them first the business plan and then tell them what the product is? Or do you just come right out and say, hey, I want to get involved in cannabis and I think there's a business there and here's the outline?
Pretty much. I know everybody, so that's the advantage as well. And it's not sort of cold calling on these people. It actually struck me having self-medicated. The ideas do spring forward. I noticed a lot better after a couple of drags on a joint. Then it was a case of, look, I can see this opportunity. See, it's staring me in the face. I know the right people who have the right skill sets, from pre-sales to technical developers to business development people to those who write business plans. And I'm sure if I brought them all together with this idea, we could make something of it. And then it was a case of sit down with each one individually and pitch my idea to them, which was to say, what's going on in the US. The writing is on the wall. From what I can see, that more and more states are going to take this up. They're going to see the revenue. They're going to be more progressive and proactive in getting medicinal marijuana legalized. And then it's not a huge leap after that to go onto the recreational side. But that's just looking at the US. And then I'm also saying, well, look what's happening in Uruguay. Look what's happened in Jamaica, Amsterdam, and the rest of Europe, in fact. And some in South Africa, where I'm from, it might happen there one day. I'm not too sure. Although they're growing commercial hemp over there at a very big scale now. So from the hemp side, that's a market to tackle. And they all understand, they can see the business opportunity and potential behind it. And so it wasn't a particularly difficult sell to get them hooked and interested in taking this further.
What comes first in this process? Figuring out what the end goal of making money is, figuring out how to get the regulation and paperwork, figuring out the marketing. What steps do you take first to even put together an idea, if it's even worth the time and energy?
It's taken a month or so to get to this point. We're actually having our big first group meeting tomorrow, where I've actually got somebody from the US as well who's also interested. So we've got a conference call happening tomorrow, about 5 or 6 of us, where we're actually going to give it the real thrashing of the idea to say, do we think this actually has legs? So let's go through, what are the legal hurdles that we're going to face doing this? What are the financial hurdles that we're going to face? Do we honestly believe that we can overcome the legal and the financial hurdles? And then also, what does the market actually look like? How big a market exists? None of us actually have enough private personal equity to throw into this to do that kind of research. So if we do feel it's there, then the next step is to write the business plan, which has been started on, and then to seek an initial round of funding. We're probably talking $500,000 worth of initial funding, which will go into doing all the market research, which involves people giving up their day jobs and being 100% dedicated to this, and probably spending 3 to 6 months traveling around, speaking to labs to do testing, to go around to all the various growers and dispensaries and recreational outlets. That's just been the US, to then go over to Uruguay and visit the farmers in the Uruguay and to have meetings with, I guess it's going to be the Minister of Agriculture in a country like Uruguay, and go and do the same in Spain and in Holland and in Portugal and Jamaica, and you're at that point you're doing all of that market research and gathering all the information and pulling it all together, because we're estimating it's going to be $20 to $30 million worth of equity, private equity investment into the business. So you're ready, before you have somebody agreeing to spend that kind of money, our approach is, well, let's just do an initial round at 500,000, make sure we've got everything wrapped up that we need to, and then at the end of that there'll be another decision as to do we pursue this any further, which I know is big numbers when it comes to money, to be throwing around numbers like 500,000 and 20 to 30 million, but that's the seriousness of the approach that we're taking.
Right.
We don't want to do it half-heartedly. And then our end game is in 5 to 10 years to be bought out. I foresee it maybe in 5-10 years, it's legal across the whole of the US and possibly globally it's become completely legalized. I then want one of the big pre-existing commodity exchanges to go, right, we want to buy it off you. And everybody's gone, we will happily sell it.
I might be a little biased, but for this month, 2 month, year long, whatever process it is where you're flying around the world and making these pitches, if you can just have a guy with a camera there at the end of it, I mean, you're looking at an absolute great documentary that I think is one more product that can be marketed or sold or just contributed to your overall brand.
I totally agree. I mean, it's not something I'd considered, but we'll definitely credit you with giving us the idea for doing that.
You know who Vice is?
Yep. I've heard of them.
I would send an email out to them, because that's the kind of thing they do all year long, is they do these long pieces, where they'll follow people around 6 months to a year and then piece it together into a 20-30 minute video documentary. But they have the resources and they already are kind of geared up doing that kind of thing. But I think because of the scale you're projecting, I think somebody else would look at it like, oh, okay, these guys are serious, and this could turn out to be the next Netflix documentary that people are talking about, because it coincides with the time that the industry takes off, and then you come out with this travel around the world and pitch to investors for the cannabis industry. I know there's a large audience out there that would love that type of media.
Oh yeah, I think there's definitely legs to that. And also from the point of view that, as you say, it's another product that you've sort of produced as it's a byproduct of trying to get the funding. You're actually producing a product.
Yeah. It's like you know who Morgan Spurlock is, his movie?
Yes.
The movie he did, I forget the title of it, but where he basically, it was a movie about getting sponsors to make movies.
About getting sponsors to make movies.
Exactly. It was an amusing but sobering experience of the reality where if you're producing media or producing businesses, you got to ask other people for money.
Yeah.
Very few people in this world have the ability to self-fund their own projects, and even fewer people would want to fully fund their own projects, even if they had the money. So I think asking other people for money is just a universal experience that everybody should and will eventually go through. I mean, I think it's a good character building experience when you have to go out and ask or beg somebody to give you money to fund your project or business, whatever it may be.
And it certainly makes you have to, really know what it is that you're selling. I mean, when you're going and asking for big investment, you have to have absolute faith in what you are pitching.
Yeah.
You can't be unsure about it, because they will tear into you fairly quickly if they detect that.
Right.
I think you've got an equivalent over there. In England, it's called Dragon's Den. I think over there in the US, they call it Shark Tank or something like that.
Yeah, Shark Tank.
The bit that always amazes me is somebody will say, I want, say, 20 million investment, but I'm only going to give you 5% of the company. And you go, that's not how this game works. These guys are not going to give you 20 million for 5%. They'll give you 20 million and leave you with 5%. and that's something else I think working in that sector is going to make, I won't say make it easier, but we do understand how venture capital works. And if somebody was to say, well, I'll give you all the money you want, but we want 75% of the company, I will most definitely sign on the dotted line for that, because I still walk away, or our group still walks away with 15% of a lot more than we started with. the experience and the knowledge you gain from teaming up with some of these venture capitalists, I mean, you can't actually put a monetary value on that.
What happens to a lot of entrepreneurs and mom and pop type operations is they're so personally vested in what they're doing in their own business is that they self-value everything they do and everything they've done much higher than what an investor's looking at. But they also approach venture capitalists as if they were angel investors, when I don't think they realize that if you're offering to sell a percentage of your company for money, the person giving you money is going to want to maximize that. This isn't your mom or your dad or your friend giving you money to, help you along and get you up on your feet while you get your own little business up and going. These are investors, people that are looking to get as much of your company for as little money as possible and then profit from it.
Exactly.
Sometimes we forget that.
Yeah, they want something back. And the big difference, of course, is going to private investors or venture capitalists and going to the bank is the bank does want its money back. The venture capitalist is willing to actually lose the money that they're investing in the business. And I think that's something else that people don't often realize. If you go to and get a bank loan, the bank is going to want you to sign security against that loan, which is invariably your house, etc. And if your idea doesn't float, the bank still wants their money. And they'll ask for lower interest on what they're lending you, but they want that money back. And private investors, they run the risk of losing their investment, and they do want higher returns, which makes sense.
They're expecting to lose, 80, 90% of all their investments, but they're holding out for that small percentage that Google's it, that Facebook's
exactly.
That makes it big.
I mean, they say on average it's about 1 in 10 that actually makes their money, and that one has to fund all the other 9 that didn't work out. That's why they're always going for fairly high stakeholding in the company that they fund. But as I said, if you walk away, 15% of nothing or 25% of nothing is nothing. 25% of 30 million is 25% of 30 million. So whichever way you cut it, it still makes sense. In my mind anyway, I'd still be willing to hand over 75% for the opportunity to take the idea as far as possible with the help of an individuals and their business experience and contacts. I mean, that's the other thing that you tend to get with private equity investors. They will bring their team to the table as well because they do want to maximize their investment.
Mark Cuban on the U.S. version of Shark Tank says it best. Do you want a piece of a grape or you want a piece of a watermelon? It's your choice, because holding out sometimes just leaves you with the grape rather than giving in, and sometimes you get a watermelon. Pretty much what you're saying. Percentages of size are pretty relative to the bigger picture. It sounds like you've been through a number of businesses before. I'm sure this one that you're working on is going to be successful. I hope that when you come out this way, you pass through Colorado and you stop by and see me.
Oh, certainly.
We can sit down and do another one in person. And please keep me up to date on everything you're doing. I want to see the pictures and videos, and that way I can pass it along to my audience also, pass it along on Facebook and other social media. And I'm thrilled that you've been listening and you're so far away, but yet you're very close in a sense. This is technology, the way it brings people together.
Exactly.
Very cool, man. Very cool. A million thank yous for listening.
That's a pleasure.
And anything you can do to help spread the word of my show, always appreciated.
Excellent.
Cool.
Great. Well, enjoy the rest of your Saturday.
Thank you, sir.
7 hours in your future.
Very good, man. Well, it was good talking to you. You have a great afternoon. We'll talk again soon.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Keep well. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to this week's show. Make sure to come back next week. We're going to have more guests lined up, speaking with dispensary owners, growers, business owners. Make sure to follow us on all of the social media, Facebook, Google+. You can listen to our shows live from the website or your preferred listening platform. Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spreaker, even YouTube, all under the same name, CannabisCommunityProject.com. We'll see you next week.